Daddy locked me in. Help!
I was wide-eyed when I received a sudden call from my 5-year-old daughter. I had left her with my husband at home while I was busy with work. Despite him babysitting, I never expected such an SOS call.
There's smoke too. Get me out of here quickly,
she said. Not understanding what was happening, I rushed out of the office in a panic. When I arrived home, I was met with an unbelievable sight. I married my husband Carlton, who is 3 years older than me, when I was 26. We met through an acquaintance. Although we worked at completely different companies, we shared similar values and our love grew steadily. After our only daughter Margaret was born, we supported each other through the challenges of first-time parenting. I hope we can continue to spend happy days together as a family of 3. I used to think this leisurely while standing next to always smiling Carlton and Margaret. However, in the 6th year of our marriage, dark clouds began to loom over our peaceful daily life. Hey, tomorrow is Margaret's 5th birthday. You can come home early, right? Carlton replied.
No, it's going to be tough. I probably can't make it.
Really? I thought I asked you to keep that day free a while ago.
It's work, so there's nothing I can do. Birthdays are just about eating cake anyway. You two can handle it,
Carlton said, leaving for work in a huff.
Daddy won't celebrate with me.
Watching Margaret sit at the dining table with a dejected look after seeing Carlton off, I felt an unbearable sadness. A sudden change disrupted our once happy life. It was none other than Carlton's attitude. He gradually stopped coming home and the days when we didn't see him increased. Whenever I asked for a reason, Carlton would always say,
I'm busy with work,
and wouldn't talk much. But that wasn't the only change. There's a special sale today. I need to make sure to buy everything. After dropping Margaret off at daycare, I sighed and took out my notepad from my pocket. At the same time Carlton stopped coming home, he suddenly became excessively strict about money. He started managing even my income, and the household allowance he gave me was only $300 a month. I couldn't even buy clothes for Margaret, so I had to dip into my savings from my single days to buy what she needed. If it was just about saving money, I would have cooperated, but he even scolded me for going to the convenience store behind our house, saying,
Don't waste money.
Despite this, I still trusted Carlton at that time. He might just be temporarily irritated because of work. Although I had my doubts, I convinced myself of this and decided to watch over him. However, contrary to my expectations, Carlton's attitude escalated. He was hardly ever home, and he gradually started pushing all responsibilities regarding Margaret onto me.
Caring for children is a woman's job, right? You're the mother, so manage both work and discipline properly,
Carlton said. Until then, he would take care of Margaret when I had to work on weekends. But with those cold words, he stopped helping even during the little time he was at home. Since my parents and in-laws lived a bit far away, I couldn't rely on them, and I couldn't leave 5-year-old Margaret home alone. So, without telling him, I decided to buy a cell phone for children with my own money.
Is this mine?
Margaret asked. Yes, But it's just for contacting me, so you can't play games on it. And keep this a secret from Daddy. If anything happens, call me. I told her. Ensuring safety, I decided to leave Margaret alone only when absolutely necessary. However, Carlton's attitude continued to worsen. Not only was he rarely home, but he also started treating me with blatant hostility. Carlton said,
I've thought this for a while, but Paige, you really can't do anything. I feel like I've been scammed into marrying such a worthless wife.
What? How can you say that? You chose me, didn't you? Carlton replied.
That's why I regret it. Please, just divorce me.
Every time we saw each other, he would say hurtful things, overturn the meals I made, and eventually demanded a divorce. At first, I thought I might have done something wrong and tried to reconcile with Carlton. However, he never explained anything and just locked himself in his room. What should I do? Honestly, my heart was breaking. But with little Margaret around, I vowed not to divorce and kept trying to persuade him to reconsider. In hindsight, that was probably the worst decision. One day, an unimaginable and terrifying incident occurred. That day, a problem arose at work, and even though it was a holiday, I had to go in suddenly. As usual, I couldn't rely on Carlton, so I was about to ask Margaret to stay home alone. But this time, Carlton was different. Carlton said,
I'll watch Margaret, so go to work. It's an emergency, right?
Unusually, he didn't go out and offered to take care of Margaret himself. Given the ongoing divorce discussions, his sudden change in attitude left me feeling confused and anxious. Still, I was grateful for his offer. Really? Thank you. Then, please take care of her. Margaret, be a good girl and wait, okay? Unaware of the tragedy that would follow, I left Margaret with him and went to work. About an hour after arriving at work, while I was working hard to finish early, I received a call. It was from Margaret, who was supposed to be with Carlton. Hello, is something wrong? Feeling suspicious, I quickly answered the phone, and the next moment,
Mommy, help! Daddy locked me in.
Margaret cried. I was stunned by her words. What? What do you mean?
I don't know, but there seems to be smoke too. Get me out of here quickly,
she said, almost in tears. Hearing her desperate cry, I found myself rushing out of the office and jumping into my car. I didn't fully understand the situation, but I knew Margaret wouldn't lie about something like this, and it was definitely an emergency. What happened? What is Carlton doing? On my way home, I anxiously tried calling him, who was supposed to be babysitting, but there was no answer. Soon, I saw fire trucks heading in the direction of our house, and my anxiety grew. Margaret, please be safe. However, my prayers were in vain. What awaited me when I arrived home was an unbelievable sight. Oh no, this can't be! As soon as I got out of the car, I covered my mouth against the intense heat. Our house, which had been normal just a few hours ago, was now engulfed in bright red flames. Margaret! For a moment, I was stunned, but remembering Margaret's cry for help, I instinctively tried to run towards the house. However, people around me stopped me, saying it was dangerous, and I fell to my knees, helpless. Margaret might be suffering in that sea of flames. Why did this happen? As I muttered powerlessly, a cheerful ringtone rang out. In a daze, unable to accept reality, I picked up my phone and my eyes widened as I saw the screen. It was an email from Carlton. It read, "I suddenly have to go on a business trip for a while. I can't take care of Margaret, so get home quickly." The casual tone of the message made me cry with anger. How can he be so irresponsible without knowing the situation? Having lost our home filled with memories and, more importantly, our precious Margaret, I felt a clear hatred towards Carlton for the first time. The next morning, I stood in front of Carlton's office. I was trembling with anger like never before. Until then, no matter how badly he treated me, I endured it, convincing myself that it was okay as long as I bore it. But thinking about the tragedy that befell Margaret, I couldn't contain my sadness and anger, and as a mother, I couldn't forgive his actions. I won't let you get away with this. After waiting a few minutes in anger, I saw Carlton in his familiar suit arriving at work.
Why are you here?
Seeing me, he stepped back in shock. Good morning. Weren't you supposed to be on a business trip?
Well, I was just about to go. I got called in suddenly yesterday. By the way, how's Margaret?
As he stammered and made excuses, I felt my anger boiling over. She's dead. There was a fire, and the house burned down.
Oh, I see. That's unfortunate. So, what happened to Margaret?
His theatrical tone finally snapped my patience. Carlton didn't seem to realize it yet, but I already knew the whole story. She couldn't escape. You locked her in. Startled by my sudden loud voice and the content of my words, Carlton stiffened. Glaring at him, I recalled the events of the previous day. Margaret survived. And I know everything you did. In a stroke of luck amidst the misfortune, after arriving at the burning house, I was informed by the paramedics that Margaret was safe. The house had burned down, but a clerk at the nearby convenience store had spotted the fire and immediately called the emergency services. One of the reasons Margaret was saved was that the fire started far from the children's room where she was. Although Margaret was injured, her life was not in danger, and she was resting in the hospital. And there was one more thing that survived the fire along with Margaret. Actually, I bought a kid's cell phone without telling you. Carlton, sweating nervously, asked.
So what?
Without a word, I took Margaret's cell phone out of my bag and showed it to him. The cell phone that survived with Margaret. Apparently, Margaret had been hiding in her room, recording videos when the incident happened. And then, Carlton had locked her in from the outside. What you did to Margaret was all caught on video. The video that luckily remained captured Margaret's desperate cries and Carlton's menacing voice saying,
Stay here! Don't you dare come out!
Not only did you do that to Margaret, but you also started the fire. You're truly unbelievable. Imagining the fear Margaret must have felt, I was overwhelmed with emotion. How terrified she must have been, being treated like that by her own father. Yet, even in such an irreparable situation, Carlton seemed determined to feign innocence.
Wait a minute. Sure, I locked her in, but that was just to keep her from going outside. Why is the fire my fault too?
To my astonishment, instead of apologizing, he frowned and showed irritation. But it was too late for him to escape now. You're still saying that? We have all the evidence.
What?
There's a convenience store behind our house, remember? Seeing Carlton gasp, I smiled. The fire had started in the backyard. Upon checking, the security camera at the convenience store had captured Carlton setting the fire with gasoline and matches. Don't think you can get away with doing something so horrific. Fueled by anger, I took a step closer to him. Why did you do this in the first place? What he did was unforgivable, but if Carlton had shown even a bit of remorse, my feelings might have softened a little.
Because you're not attractive as a wife,
he said. Incredibly, Carlton brazenly began to explain, excitedly recounting the events.
I met my soulmate. She's a much better woman than you.
Carlton said he fell in love at first sight with a woman he met at a bar after work. He continued to pursue her aggressively, and their relationship developed into something like that of lovers. Carlton, who became infatuated, started spending money on her and eventually considered marrying her. This was likely the reason he stopped coming home, became harsher towards me, and demanded a divorce.
It's your fault for not agreeing to the divorce,
Carlton said. Apparently, Carlton thought he couldn't go through with it because of Margaret, as I stubbornly refused to separate. So, he planned to get rid of Margaret in the fire. Moreover, he lied about the business trip to stay at his lover's house for a while and leave Margaret's funeral arrangements to me.
I was planning to use Margaret's insurance money and the fire insurance to spend on her,
Carlton confessed, biting his lip in frustration after spilling his true feelings. He was likely only frustrated that his plan was ruined and showed no remorse. As proof, Carlton suddenly glared at me.
Everything got messed up because of you. What are you going to do about it?
Then, in a fit of rage, he reached out to attack me with tremendous force. But we were right in front of his company. People around us had probably been watching the unusual situation unfold. Just as Carlton grabbed my collar,
Stop it!
a sharp male voice commanded. Taking advantage of Carlton's hesitation, several security guards rushed out from the company entrance and quickly restrained him.
Let go of me! Damn it!
Carlton shouted as he was pinned to the ground. I rubbed my arm, looking down at him lying there pathetically. He had set the house on fire, tried to harm his own daughter, and then tried to hurt me when caught. The thought of having been with such a terrifying person for years made my skin crawl. I didn't divorce you for Margaret's sake, but it was the opposite. For her sake, stay away from us forever, I said. Finally giving up on escaping, Carlton hung his head. And so, our supposedly happy married life came to a permanent end. Later, I divorced Carlton. After being surrounded by security guards and taken to the station, he was arrested on arson charges. With decisive evidence, it was inevitable. Carlton himself won't be out of prison for a while, but I don't intend to forgive him just for that. Currently, through a lawyer, I am demanding $250,000 in damages from him for burning down the house, endangering Margaret's life, and the affair. Carlton will undoubtedly never lead a decent life again. Meanwhile, Margaret and I, now recovered, have moved to a new house near my parents' home and are regaining a peaceful life. From now on, I plan to watch over Margaret's growth in this new environment.
How did you like this story? Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.